So, you're no longer a young man. You might be 40, 50, or even 60. Behind you, a life lived, experience, victories and losses. You've seen a lot, built some things, lost others, gone through joy and pain. And suddenly, a young woman appears, vibrant, energetic, with a spark in her eyes. There's something wild, mysterious about her. And for some reason, she pays attention to you. Not just polite interest, but genuine curiosity. She listens. She looks you in the eyes. And without even realizing it, you begin to come alive. It's as if something forgotten awakens inside you. It's exciting. It's pleasant. It's flattering. But this is exactly the moment when most men make mistakes. Mistakes they don't even realize. You see, when a mature man becomes captivated by a young woman, something unique happens to him. He suddenly forgets that he is already self-sufficient, that all those years, battles, lessons, and scars, they are not a weakness, they are his strength. But under the influence of this emotional surge, he begins to change. He softens his edges, becomes convenient, tries to fit into her world instead of standing firmly in his own. And this is when everything shifts. She stops seeing a man in him, starts seeing just a guy who tries to impress, who tries to be trendy, who adapts, who performs. And from that moment, the attraction disappears. Gone. This video is not about judgment. It's about awareness. It's about how to preserve your dignity, masculinity, and self-respect, even if you find yourself tempted, fascinated, or genuinely liked. We'll talk about what not to do when you're around a younger woman, and more importantly, how a mature man would act. Calm, confident, strong inside. This isn't just dating advice, it's a life strategy. So if you're tired of the confusion, manipulation, and the feeling that you're being thrown off course by people who've lived half as long as you, this is your wake-up call. You haven't lost. You've simply forgotten who you are. Stay with us, and you'll understand where men fall and how you can rise again, not by doing more, but by doing less. And let's start with the most important thing. Don't try to be her peer. You're not her high school buddy. One of the most common mistakes is trying to shrink yourself to her level. Start using her slang, dress to her taste, joke like her friends, or pretend you care about her shows and trends. Don't. Your strength lies in your maturity. Don't trade it for approval. It usually starts with a sincere desire to connect, to find common ground, to get closer. But what actually happens is something else entirely. You lose exactly what made you special in the first place. The moment you try to act like her peer, she stops seeing a mature, calm, experienced man in you. Instead, she sees a man who's trying too hard. And even if you're doing it subtly, she still senses it. Women, especially young women, have an unerring instinct for authenticity. When an older man starts playing young, copying her habits and lifestyle, it feels fake. Not because of the age gap, but because beneath it lies insecurity. The truth is, your age isn't a disadvantage, it's your edge. You've already walked the path. You've fallen. You've risen. You carry things within you that she isn't even capable of understanding yet. You radiate confidence, calm, and that rare strength that only comes from years of struggle and experience. That's what draws her in, not your knowledge of TikTok trends or the ability to quote her favorite late-night show. But sadly, men often start believing they have to keep up with her to stay interesting. When in reality, The most attractive thing you can do is slow down. Don't rush. Be the anchor. Let her be the whirlwind of youth and energy, and you stand calm and grounded in your essence. Here's an example. You're on a date, and she says she's obsessed with some 23-year-old influencer. You could pretend you know who that is, laugh, nod, maybe even casually scroll through his profile on your phone. Or you could just smile calmly and say, "I don't really follow that stuff. I'm more interested in conversations that don't disappear after 24 hours." One sentence, and there's strength in it. There's contrast, there's mystery. And that's exactly what throws her off her usual rhythm, in the best way possible. Because you're not trying to be like her, you're reminding her that you're different. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to be on the same wavelength, you become truly magnetic. Now, let's move on to the second key point. Don't become her emotional container. One of the common traps for older men is to start absorbing everything happening in a young woman's life. Her anxiety, her confusion, her childhood wounds. You think you're being supportive, that you're there for her, that she needs you. And it usually starts out innocently enough. She begins to open up. She talks about her past. Maybe her ex treated her badly. Maybe her parents were emotionally unavailable. Maybe she's working on herself right now. And since you're a mature, balanced, emotionally stable man, you listen. You want to help. You feel that maybe she sees in you what she can't find in men her own age. But over time, you notice you've become her therapist. You're the one she calls at midnight when she can't handle her emotions. You're her shoulder to cry on, her emotional dumping ground. And deep down, you believe this is bringing you closer. You think, if I'm the one who understands her, she'll choose me. But the truth is, this isn't a romantic bond. It's an emotional substitute for a real relationship. Young women especially sometimes instinctively gravitate toward older men, searching for stability. But if you mistake the role of an emotional guardian for genuine attraction, you put yourself in the most painful and confusing position, in the zone of almost a relationship, in a friend zone disguised as intimacy. You hear about her mistakes, about her confusing dates, about her emotional roller coasters. But none of this leads to respect or to real attraction. Why? Because a mature man doesn't dive into someone else's chaos just to feel needed. He creates calm simply by being calm.
He knows how to listen without rescuing. He can offer advice without interfering. There's a big difference between being emotionally available and emotionally absorbing. The first is maturity. The second is dependency masked as kindness. Imagine she calls you, crying, telling you about some new drama. And instead of rushing in to save her, you calmly say, "Sounds like you're going through a lot. I hope you give yourself the space to reflect." With that one sentence, you show you're present but not entangled. She feels heard, but she can't pull you into her emotional storm. That is the practice of Stoicism. Not being cold, but knowing the difference between presence and losing yourself for others. A man who manages his emotions doesn't let other people's storms knock him off course, no matter how beautiful that storm may appear. Now, the third mistake. Never chase her approval. Let's talk about one subtle but deeply destructive mistake that kills respect between an older man and a younger woman: the chase for her validation. At first glance, it doesn't look like desperation. It starts quietly. You give her one too many compliments. You wait a little too long for her reply in the messenger. You lower your standards, just to keep her interest. You change your tone. You filter your words, all for one thing, her approval. But here's the truth. The moment you need her validation, she loses interest in you. You stop being a man. You become a performer. You're no longer leading, you're pleasing. You're no longer rooted in your masculine core. You orbit around her emotions like a satellite around a planet, desperately seeking gravity. This isn't attraction, it's slow self-destruction. And for a young woman who is still forming her identity and figuring herself out, it turns into a power game. Not always consciously, but instinctively, she senses when your inner foundation begins to wobble, when you adapt instead of standing your ground. And rather than appreciate your flexibility, she starts to test you. She pulls away, grows colder, just to see, will you chase her again? You won't earn her respect by being convenient. Respect comes when you stay centered in yourself. Stoicism teaches, a man's value is not determined by how others see him, but by how he sees himself. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We love ourselves more than others, but we care more about their opinion than our own." Flip that. The moment you stop depending on her opinion, you reclaim your power. Now let's talk about practice. You're texting a young woman. She replies 5 hours later. You notice, but you don't panic. You don't send a second message. You don't drop a meme to keep the conversation going. You continue with your life. You train, you grow, you build your world. You allow her to come back to the conversation on her own. And if she doesn't, you still win, because you didn't betray yourself. The moment you start chasing her approval, you lose your edge. And for a mature man, this is especially important, because your strength doesn't lie in being fun or relatable. Your strength lies in your stability, in your confidence, in your depth. That's what attracts. The contrast, your emotional stillness against her inner storm. Now to the core question. Why do men even start seeking this validation? Because they're afraid. Afraid of becoming irrelevant. Society whispers, "You're too old to compete." And when a young woman shows interest, a man overestimates it. He thinks, if I lose her, there won't be another chance. But that's not truth. That's scarcity thinking. You're not losing an opportunity. You're avoiding a trap. The chase for validation always ends in betrayal of self. You start agreeing with things you don't actually believe in. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You tolerate behavior you wouldn't normally accept just to avoid conflict. But here's the paradox. Peace that comes at the cost of losing yourself isn't peace. It's self-erasure. And women feel this, especially younger ones. They're drawn to older men not because those men give in to them, but because they don't. Because a mature man doesn't preach, he radiates strength through his presence. When you stop seeking her approval, you give her something far more magnetic, a reason to prove herself to you. Let me tell you a story. Tom, 48 years old, divorced, successful, started dating a 28-year-old woman. At first, it was thrilling, but then he began trying too hard. He took her on expensive dates, showered her with compliments, stayed silent when he disagreed, adjusted his views just to avoid arguments. And slowly, she began to pull away. She became less and less interested. The respect faded. One day she said, "I just don't feel the spark anymore." But what she really meant was, "You lost the edge that made me choose you." After the breakup, Tom changed. He stopped playing a role, got back into training, launched a new venture, reconnected with his purpose. Months later, she reached out to him, but he was already a different man. He didn't need her validation. He had become the man he should have been from the beginning. And she felt that. That's the power of not chasing. That's Stoic strength in action. You don't need her applause. You don't need her agreement. You don't even need her to stay. You only need one thing: to remain centered in yourself. And when you're in that center, she either rises to meet you or disappears from your world. Either way, you win. Write in the comments, "I lead from the center," if you're tired of pretending and ready to live in truth. And don't go anywhere, because next we'll talk about what happens when you stop trying to impress and start to lead. Point 4. Don't impress, lead. You're not here to impress. Understand that. Because the entire modern dating world says the opposite. Flashy dinners, witty texting. What can I say to make her fall in love? And all that nonsense. But if you're a mature man dealing with a younger woman, then trying to impress her is exactly what weakens your power and drains your influence. Why? Because the moment you shift from leadership to performance, you lose your masculine core. You give her the role of the judge and put yourself in the position of the applicant. That subtle shift changes everything. Now you're no longer holding the frame. You're asking her to hold it for you. That restaurant you rushed to book in a panic. That shirt you bought just because you thought she might like it. That compliment you rehearsed, afraid it might be misunderstood. She feels all of it, not in words, but energetically. And that energy says, "I hope this works." That doesn't spark desire. It smells like insecurity. But don't confuse this. To lead doesn't mean to pressure. It doesn't mean to command or place yourself above. It's about direction, confidence, and inner steadiness. When you're with a young woman, especially one used to emotional instability from men her age, she instinctively looks for something else. Someone who doesn't lose himself, who doesn't need approval to keep going. And you show that when you lead. Leadership isn't loud, it's clear. You say, "Let's go there," instead of, "What do you want to do?" You move with confidence, without arrogance. You don't ask for permission to be a man. You are one. Let's look at a real example. You meet a young woman for coffee. Most older men immediately try to impress, talking about their career, cars, travel. You don't. You sit calmly, confidently. You ask about her views, her values. You listen, not to argue, but to understand. You don't speak to win. You speak to connect. You don't shine on the outside. You radiate inner calm. And that's when she is drawn to you, not because you tried, but because you were grounded. You didn't chase her attention. You became a source of respect. Stoicism teaches this in every detail. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish." Why? Because a Stoic doesn't live for applause. He lives by principle. And that works in relationships too. You don't adjust to what she wants. You live by your direction. If she walks with you, great. If not, you don't waver. You keep going. Many men forget this. Your mission is not to impress her, but to show who you are. In the way you hold eye contact, in the calm way you say no, without needing to explain. That's real masculine energy. It isn't loud, but it's unforgettable. Leadership isn't just about making decisions. It's also emotional leadership. When she loses her balance, you remain calm. When she tests boundaries, you don't let them be crossed. If she tries to pull you into drama, you step back. Not as punishment, but because inner peace is your norm. When you show stability, you give her what she lacks, a confident man she can trust even in moments of her doubt. Those who try to impress her may hold her interest for one evening, but those who truly lead stay in her mind for much longer because they create contrast, a steady masculine energy that doesn't seek approval. So stop rehearsing what to say. Stop chasing magic phrases. Don't try to win her over like she's a trophy. You're not a contestant. You're the frame she steps into. You lead. Write in the comments, "I lead with intention," if you're tired of pretending and ready to show real confidence. Don't miss this, because once you stop over-investing too early, everything starts to fall into place. And here's another important point. Don't build long-term fantasies right at the start. You just met her. She's attractive, young, showing interest. And suddenly your mind jumps to, what if this lasts? You picture trips together, dinners with her parents, maybe even marriage. You paint images of the future, even though almost nothing has happened yet. But emotionally, you're already involved. And that's the danger. Because when you project a future too soon, you stop seeing her for who she really is. Instead of observing, you begin fantasizing, and those fantasies become a trap. Why? Because you're reacting not to the real woman, but to the image you've created in your mind. Every red flag you excuse with, "It'll pass." Differences in values you ignore, thinking, "We'll work it out." You downplay obvious things because you're already attached to the illusion. And she feels it, not through words, through energy. She feels the weight of your expectations, senses how you're rushing things. And to a young woman, that kind of pressure isn't flattering, it's suffocating. She didn't promise you forever, she's just getting to know you. Let's ground this in Stoicism. Epictetus said, "Before you act, consider what it is you're about to do." Dating isn't about building castles in the air. It's about gathering facts, especially in the beginning. Your job is not to fantasize, but to observe where it might go. It's important to pay attention to what's happening here and now, and most importantly, to see everything clearly. When you start looking too far into the future, you stop being present in the moment, and presence is everything. You miss important signs. You tolerate behavior that you'd never accept from others. You excuse disrespect, inconsistency, or immaturity simply because you've already become emotionally attached to an image of the woman that doesn't even exist yet. And here's what happens next. You start investing too early. You sacrifice yourself unnecessarily. You change your plans. You abandon important things. Skip workouts. Say no to your friends. You soften your boundaries, all for the hope of something meaningful. But hope is a fantasy. Reality is shown in her actions. If she shows inconsistency, immaturity, or selfishness, that's who she is right now, not the woman she could possibly become in your imagination. No fantasy will change that. There's nothing wrong with hope, but hope without real observation becomes self-deception. And for a man with life experience, such an illusion is costlier than for a young one. You risk not only your emotions, you risk your time, your energy, your mission, and that's a price you can't afford to waste. Let me give you an example. Dean, 52, a successful and emotionally mature man, started dating a woman in her mid-20s. She was playful, spontaneous, attractive. After just 2 weeks, he was telling his friends, "I think she might be the one." He was reorganizing his schedule for her, canceling business trips, reallocating finances to build a future with her. But her level of engagement wasn't the same. She often canceled plans at the last minute, sometimes disappeared without explanation, said one thing and did another. Instead of addressing it directly, he started romanticizing the situation, convincing himself she just needs time. 3 months later, she vanished without warning or explanation, simply disappeared. Dean was devastated not because of losing her, but because of losing what he imagined. He was mourning not her, but the future he had built in his mind alone. That's what projection does. It builds castles in your head that reality doesn't support. So, what's the right path of a Stoic? Stay grounded. Be interested, but don't invest too soon. You focus on her behavior, not just her potential. Even if there's strong chemistry between you, you intentionally slow down the emotional pace. You don't fantasize about the future until you've seen how she handles difficulties, stress, or conflict. Because attraction is easy, but compatibility, that's the real test. Instead of dreaming about the future with her, observe how she acts here and now. The truth is hidden in the present moment. Leave a comment if you're ready to step out of the world of illusions and see things with clarity. And don't be in a hurry to leave. Because what happens when you stop being her backup plan? That's what most men never realize in time. Point 6. Don't become her backup airfield or emotional plug. Here's the harsh truth men don't want to admit. Sometimes you're not the main man in her life. You're the just-in-case option. You're the maybe, the might be useful, her emotional crutch when the one she really wants isn't around. You become her therapist, her entertainment, her insurance policy, but not her priority. If you're not careful, it's easy to confuse attention with genuine connection. She texts you when she's bored, calls when she's feeling down, flirts just enough to keep you around, but she never actually moves towards something real. One day she's warm, the next she disappears for the weekend, then comes back like nothing happened. And you keep making excuses. You tell yourself she's just busy, just confused. But deep down, you know, you're not her choice. You're her convenience. And that's an unacceptable role. Because here's the truth. Women don't fall in love with someone they can lean on. They fall in love with someone they can admire. If she knows you'll always be there, no matter how little she gives you, she stops valuing you. Not because she's cruel, but because human nature devalues what's always available and costs nothing. Stoicism teaches us to respect ourselves and walk away from anything that violates our principles. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who make you better." The opposite is also true. Avoid those who make you less than you are. Being someone's backup option is a silent killer of male energy. Because over time, you start shrinking inward. You become more convenient, less authentic. You adapt yourself just to keep her from leaving. You keep showing up, hoping that one day she'll recognize your worth. But a woman doesn't see your value when you devalue yourself. She feels your value when you set boundaries and stick to them. Let me give you an example. Pavel, 47, met a 26-year-old woman through mutual friends. She was charismatic, intelligent, and unpredictable. They saw each other every couple of weeks. Great conversations, light flirting, clear attraction. But she never talked about anything serious. She could disappear for days, then call in tears, complaining about another man. And Pavel always answered. He thought he could win her heart by being supportive. But what did she see? A man she could dump her emotions on until someone more interesting showed up. One day she said, "You feel like my safe place." It sounded touching, but Pavel realized this wasn't about love. It was about convenience. That same night, he ended contact. 3 months later, she reached out again. Only this time, her tone had changed. She felt he was no longer there to catch her when she fell. And that changed everything. Why? Because Pavel reclaimed his position. He stopped being the safety net. He became the standard. You're not desired when you're always available. You're valued when you choose where to give your time. You're not a temporary comfort, a blank space, or the guy she vents to about the one she really wants. You're a man who refuses to settle for half-hearted love. What does that mean in practice? If she only calls when she's down but goes silent when things are good, take a step back. If she texts out of loneliness but fears getting closer, don't respond. If she turns you into a sponge for her emotions, don't absorb. Let her feelings bounce off you like water off stone. You don't need to block her. You don't need to be harsh or vindictive. Just quietly and firmly remove her access to your energy. No drama, no words. Because your energy isn't free. Women don't regret losing the man who was always around. They regret losing the man who knew his worth and walked away when the relationship became one-sided. And that is Stoic behavior, calm, clear, detached. And if she comes back, it won't be because you begged. It'll be because your absence said far more than your presence ever could. Leave a comment below. I won't be her backup plan. If you're truly tired of holding on to people who aren't holding on to you, and stay here, because what happens when you finally put your purpose first? That is what sets you apart from every other man she's known before. Point 7. Never sacrifice your calling for her. This is where even the strongest men break. Not when she doesn't respond, not when she tests your boundaries, but when she starts to feel special, when emotions appear, when passion is at its peak and you suddenly start thinking, maybe she's worth adjusting for. And little by little, you start drifting off course. You skip your workout, postpone a professional goal, put your business idea on hold, spend less time with your friends and more time on your phone. You start replying faster, rearranging plans for her, adjusting your life to make her feel more comfortable in it. It all seems like small things, even romantic. But in reality, you're stepping off your path for her. And that's the moment your fall begins. Because women, especially young ones, don't want to be your purpose. They want to feel safe next to a man who already has one. They want to be part of your world, not the reason for it. Do you understand? The essence of being a man isn't control, it's direction. The clearer your path is, the more firmly you stand on it, the more you attract. When you move forward in the name of your purpose, your discipline, your mission, she can feel it. She might test you. She might question your priorities. But if you don't flinch, she respects it, even if she never admits it out loud. Stoicism teaches us this constantly. Marcus Aurelius didn't care what others thought of his path. He simply walked it. He said, "The worth of a man is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." So let me ask, who do you become when you trade your ambition for comfort? You become invisible. A man without a mission is a man who's easily replaced. He becomes dependent on others' emotions, lives in reaction. His day depends on her mood, and she feels that. And when she feels that she's become the center of your life, she'll either lose interest or worse, lose respect. Let me show you how it plays out in real life. There was a man, his name is Artyom, 45 years old, a top manager who built a successful company from scratch. He met a woman in her mid-20s, smart, vibrant, full of spark. She knew how to surprise him. He liked that. They grew close. But over time, he began to change his usual rhythm. He turned down business trips, rescheduled his mornings to match her routine, postponed an important investment because the relationship was becoming serious. From the outside, it looked like he was madly in love. But inside, he was starting to lose himself. His focus faded, his edge dulled, and eventually, she disappeared too. Why? Because she stopped feeling his strength. He was no longer the man who attracted her, the one who was creating, moving forward, burning with purpose. He became a passenger in his own life. And that is the quiet death of attraction. Not because he made a mistake, but because he forgot where his inner power came from. Never confuse love with self-sacrifice. If a woman is truly right for you, she'll want you to stay focused. It will matter to her that you're passionate about your growth, your work, your code, your mission. She'll want to be near your fire, not the reason you put it out. And if she leaves because you didn't put her first, let her go. Because a man who stays true to his path, who keeps building, evolving, rising, will never be without options. But if he gives all that up for a woman who doesn't value it, he simply loses himself. So, don't stray from your path. Wake up on time. Take that business trip. Invest in your dream. Train, even when you don't feel like it. Speak your truth, even if she doesn't like it. Let her feel what it's like to be next to a man who doesn't bend for comfort. That's what inspires her. That's what keeps her close. That's what preserves her respect long term. Leave a comment below. I never stray from my path. If you're tired of shrinking yourself for love and ready to start leading with confidence. And don't stop here, because the moment you refuse to trade your principles for her approval, the rules of the game change completely. Point 8. She needs a rock, not a puppet on strings. Let's be clear. She doesn't want a man who adjusts to her every emotion, even if she tests you, even if she provokes, irritates, becomes cold or distant. What she actually wants is to feel that you remain yourself, that you don't back away from your essence. You see, a young woman may play games. She may flirt and then pull away. Today she says, you're too closed off, and tomorrow, you're too available. This emotional pendulum isn't meant to confuse you, although that's exactly what will happen if you're not centered in yourself. It exists for something else, to reveal you. She needs to see what happens when she shakes you. Do you lose your balance? Start chasing her? Try to guess what she wants and give it before she even asks? If yes, then you're no longer a pillar. You're already a puppet. And puppets don't earn trust. Here's what you need to understand. You can be kind. You can be attentive, empathetic, a good listener. But the moment you start reshaping your core to meet her whims, she feels it. And the attraction begins to fade. Because what she really needs is structure. Not in the form of rules or control, but in your inner stability. In the energy of a man who knows exactly who he is and doesn't shrink or puff up just to please her. She will test your emotional strength, not to destroy it, but to understand, is it real? And if you don't have it, if you crumble from just one disapproving glance, a sharp comment, or playful detachment, she knows you're not leading, you're adjusting. And that doesn't attract. That repels. Stoicism gives clear grounding. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Peace comes when you stop depending on the words, opinions, and actions of others." That's the essence of being a rock. Calm, unshakable, silent dignity that doesn't require validation. It means staying calm when she loses her balance. Staying yourself when she becomes inconsistent. Staying the course when she tries to knock you off track. Let me give you an example. A man named Drew, 50 years old, confident, successful, recently divorced. He starts dating a young woman around 25. Lively, spontaneous, unpredictable. At first, everything goes great. But then the tests begin. She starts criticizing his habits, flirting with others in front of him, making comments like, "You'd be more attractive if you dressed younger." Back then, Drew might have conformed. bought trendy clothes, tried to please her, smiled and played along. But now he's different. He simply smiled calmly and said, "Funny, I like the way I look." He didn't justify, didn't get angry, didn't retreat. He stayed centered within himself. 2 days later, she wanted to see him again. Not because he agreed with her, but because he didn't. That moment told her everything she needed to know. He doesn't bend. Not for approval, not for validation, not to please. He is a rock. Because here's what's important to know. Most women don't trust a man they can control. They need someone who respects himself enough to say no, calmly, without anger. And yes, not out of need, but by conscious choice. They need to feel your groundedness, not your obedience. And if you're older, that is exactly your advantage. Not the money, not the life stories, but the fact that you've walked the inner path, discovered who you are, and have no intention of abandoning yourself, even for the most beautiful and young woman. That's what separates fleeting attraction from deep, lasting magnetism. You don't win her heart by becoming convenient. You earn her respect by being someone who isn't easily moved. Leave a comment below. I stand firm if you're tired of shrinking yourself and ready to hold your ground. And don't leave, because in the very moment you stop letting her pull your strings, something important happens. Who's truly holding the frame becomes obvious. Point 9. Don't buy her attention, attract it. There's a dangerous illusion many older men carry into relationships with younger women. If I give her enough time, gifts, care, she'll stay. But here's the harsh truth. A woman's attention can't be bought. Not the kind that really matters, the kind that stays. It can only be earned, drawn in, revealed. Let's break it down. When a man starts giving too much, whether dinners, constant attention, or emotional support, he's really broadcasting one thing: my value is external. As if the moment he stops paying, she'll walk away. If he doesn't try to impress her, she might lose interest. And even if she stays around, it won't be out of desire, it'll be out of convenience. And when a woman stays because it's easier, not because she feels pulled toward you, you've already lost. Especially if she's younger and has options. She doesn't need a sponsor, she needs a signal. A signal that you don't just have resources, but self-control. That you're not trying to win her attention, you naturally command it with your confidence, your behavior, your energy, your direction in life. That's what truly attracts. And the Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about how to please others. He spoke about inner peace. He said, "Don't waste time debating what a good man should be one." The same principle applies here. Stop playing the role of the ideal man. Just be him. Real attention isn't screamed for, it's drawn in. This isn't about loudness or cocky confidence. It's about the inner center you live from. It's about making a woman pause and wonder what drives you. It's about fewer words, more intention. About valuing your time, even when spent alone. Here's an example. Dan was 50. At a networking event, he met a woman. She was 27. The conversation flowed easily. She was curious, vibrant, and used to male attention. Most men around her tried to win her with gifts, compliments, and favors. Dan didn't. He offered to meet only when it fit into his schedule. He didn't flood her with messages. He showed up when he said he would, but never overextended himself. At first, she tested him. She wouldn't reply for a while. Sometimes she showed attitude. But Dan didn't flinch. He didn't start trying harder. He remained calm, light, and unbothered. And what happened? She started reaching out to see him. Not because he gave more, but because he didn't need her. You attract attention when you live a life where a woman doesn't need to be, but you're open to her presence if she adds value. You don't chase her interest. You create the space for her to feel your grounded strength. Comment below, "I don't chase," if you're ready to stop buying attention and start radiating true presence. And stay tuned, because when you stop trying to earn her attention, you awaken something in her she didn't even know was there. Point 10. Let her earn access to your depth. You carry years behind you, mistakes, wins, failures, doubts, and the path to recovery. You wear scars, visible or not, that younger men haven't earned yet. That's depth, and it's a powerful resource. But there's a mistake many older men make. Many men reveal their depth too early. You meet a young, attractive woman, she's charming, she smiles, she shows interest. And suddenly you start sharing everything, your memories, beliefs, pain, your past. You lay it all out in front of someone who hasn't done anything to earn it yet. You think that honesty will bring you closer, but often it only lightens your soul and burdens hers. Because real connection isn't built on the volume of confessions, but on how ready she is to handle it. You don't owe her your story, not on the first date, not because she's beautiful, not because she seems special. Yes, she may be sweet, attentive, sincere, but access to your inner world isn't given in advance. It must be earned. Let her show emotional maturity. Let her demonstrate stability. Let her deal with her own triggers before you reveal your truth. It's like a car. You wouldn't hand the keys to a Ferrari to a child. Not because the car isn't trustworthy, but because the child isn't ready to drive it. You carry wisdom inside you, but if you share it too early, it will feel like preaching. You have passion, but if you pour it out right away, it will feel like pressure. Let her earn the right to touch your depth. And don't confuse restraint with coldness. You can be sincere, kind, engaged, but that doesn't mean you should lay everything bare right away. You don't need to appear deep to impress. Let time, actions, and her consistency show whether she's worthy of entering your inner world. The Stoics called this self-control. Seneca said, "As with a story, so it is with life. It's not the length, but the quality that matters." The same goes for intimacy. It doesn't matter how quickly you go deep. What matters is how real it becomes when it happens. And true depth doesn't arrive on schedule. Example, Mark, 53, met a 29-year-old artist. On their early dates, she asked serious questions about childhood trauma, about the meaning of life. Mark wanted to open his soul, but he didn't. Not because he was hiding something, but because he was observing. Instead of opening up right away, he acted differently. He asked, "How do you usually handle difficulties?" He watched not just her words, but her behavior. He noticed how she acted when things didn't go as planned. He listened not to her answers, but to her state. Weeks passed. She showed maturity, honesty, and genuine interest. And then he opened the door to his inner world, and it was the right time. Because now she was ready. Because now she earned it. That's the true value of your depth. It's not about how open you are. It's about the fact that not everyone has access to you. Leave a comment. I guard my depth. If you're tired of giving your soul to the first person who smiled, that's it, brother. If you've read this far, you're not like most. You're not here for likes or shallow games. You came to grow, to lead, to become stronger inside. That's exactly what this channel is for. If even one sentence resonated today, subscribe right now. Not just to watch, but to walk alongside other men who have chosen the path of growth. Thank you for being here today. And remember, you're not chasing her, you're building yourself.